Everyone. It's 2026. For those who follow me, you might notice I didn't do a Friday wrap up last week. I've been sick for the last several days. You may see me cough a time or two here, but I'm back on my feet, sort of, and we're going to do this. So, what this show is about, it's um, it's basically a wrap up of all the things that have been happening in about the last 6 weeks and setting the trajectory for what's going to happen for all of next year. And I'm going to give you my personal opinion. This is coming from what God told me when I had my near-death experience in '68. He says, I'm going to bring you out and catapult you into the mainstream when America is on the brink, when everything is collapsing worldwide, globally. I think we're there right now. And I think that the transfer of wealth is happening. And I think that God is moving upon this earth like you cannot believe. And so with that, we're going to get into this. And the reason I'm doing this is twofold. I want to have everybody understand that there's so many things going on that are going to be scary. We have to know God's in control. We have to basically remain calm and understand that all of the shaking that we're seeing has to happen. And then the show we're going to do tomorrow will be kind of a recap of stuff we've done before. But I think it's very important now that we're seeing that the reset is happening, that the transfer of wealth is happening. I think we need to go back and talk about the judicial use of the money that God has given you and how you manage it. So with that, let's get started on basically the first slide from Kim Clement. And this is what I truly believe in my heart is going on. People have been looking at this prophecy. It was made all the way back in 2014 and saying, he missed it. It didn't have, no. You got to understand, everything is in God's timing. And right now, the way I look at this prophecy and other prophecies from Kent and other people, they're all coming true right now. They all started on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day, the transfer of wealth started and the reset, the financial reset started. So I'm going to read you two quotes from two prophecies from Kim Clement that we're going to jump into the details. So here it is. On June the 14th, 2014, he said, the rendering is coming. In the fall, many will fall, and listen to this, and many will rise from the dust. But remember, when those tremors and when those tumultuous moments happen, listen, I will make it so the fall can do its work in where America. So America is being restored. America is coming back into power. America is stepping into the position of leadership that God has always intended us to be in. Let's go to the next slide and we'll see where this fits together with this other prophecy, which was given on the same day. Winter will say, I am, excuse me, that throat. Winter will say, I will make them happy. I have chosen each season to manifest something. My will shall be done. And then he says, hypnotic November. We've been through that. Every kind of change you can imagine happened. And by Christmas, we'll be happy. And I believe that we saw the actual transfer of wealth happen on Christmas. And what was it? It was when the silver squeeze happened, when we realized that gold was going through the roof, that silver was going through the roof, that the groundwork was laid for XRP to go through the roof and to be used for what it was intended for, which was to transfer funds internationally from border to border. And the things that are happening now here in early January relate to the currencies. So we're going to walk through all of that in the second part of this presentation, and you're going to see that God's appointed time is here. And another prophecy that Kim Clement had that I didn't put up, he said what? He said that all of the whole financial system was going to be brought down with a simple stone. A simple stone. And what was that simple stone? It's silver. Silver is what has triggered the collapse of the global financial banking system. And when the financial banking system goes down, that means they lose control of all the spheres of influence. And then we'll get into all of the things that are falling and rising, the people that are losing power, the people that are coming into power. And I think you'll see before we're done that these prophecies from Kim Clement are happening as we speak. Let's go to the next slide. And we're going to go on a trip around the world. Now, for those of you who follow me, you know I've done some shows on geopolitical realignment. But man, the way things are changing in the last week or two, we have to do some reviews. So I'm going to walk you on a real quick trip around the world. And so basically, we've got Venezuela. And Trump just went in and got Maduro. And now we need to talk about what does that signify? What was significant there? Maduro is Venezuela is the stronghold of South America. If we can get control of Venezuela, which we have now, then basically we can use that as an anchor to get control of the rest of South America and to bring peace and harmony through the whole Western Hemisphere. So why is, just a quick review for those of you who have been following the news, why was it so important that Donald Trump go into Venezuela and get Maduro? First of all, he got him alive. It was important because Trump has said from ever that the 2020 election was over. It's not over yet. It got stolen. We've got all the people. They're in witness protection, but they needed to get Maduro himself to get all the depth of information. So we're going to find out in unbelievable detail that the 2020 election in America was stolen and that elections in 71 other countries are stolen. What does that do? So we get the money with the financial reset, but with the disclosure of the theft of the elections, with the auto pin from Biden, with all of the things that he did and didn't do, and going all the way back to Carter, we now are going to have an understanding that we haven't had an honest government for most of my lifetime, and we're going to be in a position to basically, this is the fall part, to take most of the government in Washington, most of the people in politics and at every level, local, state, and federal, out of office because they were brought in unconstitutionally and the elections were rigged. And so we're going to see the draining of the swamp. Just imagine you're in a bathtub and you pull the plug and the water's all running out. The swamp is draining. And as it drains, then God's hand is going to come in and we're going to get control of all the kingdoms of man. So basically, he was there to expose the election fraud. He was there because of the drug trafficking that had killed so many Americans. Trump was there to get back the oil because we are three of our oil companies are what developed the oil fields in Venezuela. And Trump says unabashedly, we're taking them back. And they have more confirmed oil reserves than any other nation in the world. So America just got a lot wealthier. And what did Trump say? We're going to install a government and we're going to run it until such time as we think that Venezuela is basically stabilized. And so all of that is happening in Venezuela. And why the embargoes? To cut the oil supply coming from Venezuela, going to China, and basically putting that also, if he hadn't been able to go in and get Maduro out, it would have eventually led to a situation where they had economic total absolute collapse. Either way, we were going to win. Let's go on down to Iran. I don't know if you've been following this because it's not necessarily on the mainstream news, but the people in Iran have stood up. And for those of you who don't know, there's a very large Christian community that's developed right in the heart of Islam, right in the heart of the Middle East, and with the mullahs and all of that. And basically, we're in, I think, day 10, and we've routed the military now. Basically, the guard has been routed. They've been burning their cars. They've been burning their facilities. And it's just a matter of time until the entire Iranian government collapses. And what did Trump say? You see this guy down here when the Ayatollah went out and kind of warned people. When Trump came on, he was on Air Force One, and he said, if you start shooting the people in the streets, understand that we're locked and loaded here in America, and we'll come in and take you out. And so what's happened in the last 48 hours? We've been flying planes over to England and flying planes to Germany and positioning military so that if we need to intervene in Iran, we're there, ready to go. So Venezuela has fallen. I think Iran is in the process of falling. And then we need to spend some time on our hemisphere. But before we do that, let's jump over to the far side and let's look at what's happening. We have to have peace and prosperity to usher in God's kingdom. And Trump is putting some pressure on both Ukraine and Russia that maybe people don't know. The Achilles heel that could bring this war to an end is oil. Basically, Russia now is in very bad financial condition, and they depend on what? Primarily oil and natural gas. And Trump has cut them off because he brokered a deal with the EU and with India not to purchase the oil from Russia. And what that means is if they have nobody to sell their oil to, you have to keep a well constantly pumping once you tap it. If you don't, it breaks the vacuum, and then it's very costly. It takes a long time to bring that well back in. So if he can leave Russia with virtually no place to sell oil to, he'll fill his oil reserve tanks, and they'll get into an economic crisis that will shut those wells down. And I don't think Putin is going to go there. That might not be the event that ends that war, but it's certainly putting a lot of pressure on Russia and Ukraine to settle this war. And then there's still saber rattlings going on over in Asia, where China is looking to still threaten to take Taiwan so that they can get control of the chip market. So all of that is happening. And what does it go? It goes right back to Ken Clement's prophecy. There's going to be people falling, nations falling, people rising, nations rising. The whole, just think of it as a deck of cards, and all the decks are getting shuffled. Governments are falling in a day, and others are rising. Politicians are resigning, others are taking their place. Elections are going to be called. We have never seen this degree of change in such a short period of time, and certainly in my lifetime, and I'm no young kid. So now let's go to the most important part for us that live in America. That's the Western Hemisphere. And I've been doing shows on geopolitical alignment, but now we're going to focus on just America, just the Western Hemisphere. There's the power is shifting to Asia in a way that it hasn't for decades, and Asia is going to be rising, and that's good. I'm happy for them. But what it means for us is that we're going to have control of our hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere. So what's happening is, for those who follow a little bit of history, we had something way, way, way back called the Monroe Doctrine that said that America was the superpower of the Western Hemisphere and we needed to control it. And that's exactly what we're doing. So I'm going to walk you through this map, and I'm going to show you everything that's strategic that Trump has been orchestrating with regard to our hemisphere. So let's start over in Alaska. It's crucial that we have Alaska for the natural resources, but also because of the proximity to Russia, where we can control the seaway there. And then on the other side, it's also equally, if not more important, that we control Greenland. So Trump said just the other day that Greenland needs to be a part of America. We need to have it as a trade group, a northern trade route over to Asia and to Europe, and we need to have it for strategic military purposes. Then let's go down to Canada. And I think a lot of people think Canada is our friend, but I would contend that they're not. We fought a war to get out from under the British, and the British are the puppet masters who control the world, because during their 300 years of colonizing nations, they basically got control of most of the money in the world, and the bankers control the money, and that is coming out of England. And so here's some things that are breaking, and I don't know how it's going to come down. It's too soon to tell, but we go back a few weeks, and Alberta said, we've had enough of being manipulated by Ottawa and having all of our natural resources taken by Ottawa to make Ottawa wealthy while we're sitting here impoverished. And so they did a deal with Donald Trump behind Ottawa's back, and all of a sudden, all the Western provinces woke up, and now there's 6 Western provinces that are putting out petitions to get a referendum to possibly become the 51st through 56 states of the United States of America. Now, whether that's just a ploy to negotiate with Ottawa or whether they're really serious about that, only time will tell. But basically, I believe, and there have been prophets that have been saying it, and I think it's set up right now to happen in 2026. I think there's a lot of turmoil in Canada, and I think Canada is going to have a significant change in government, and either they will align with us, they'll get out from under Britain, or they'll become part of the United States of America. Both nations would benefit because they have water that we need, they have oil that we need, we have things that they need, we have technology. We can both benefit if we truly become partners, close that border, stop that fentanyl from coming in, stop the relationships that you have with China, the relationship you have with England, and we will help you be prosperous beyond your imagination. Now we go down to Mexico and in Latin America and in South America, and we have been absolutely, what's the word I'm looking for? We have failed our neighbors in the Southern Hemisphere. We have stepped back and done nothing and let Russia come in and let China come in and because these nations were left in poverty, let the cartels get in. That all has to change. So Trump has said throughout all of Mexico, Latin America, and South America, the cartels are now considered terrorists. They're fair game for anywhere, wherever we find them. And those nations basically do not have sovereign governments because they're all controlled to one degree or another by the cartels. So Trump's going to come in and he's going to clean the cartels out, and he's going to create situations where doing business with America and being a good partner for America is going to benefit them. So let's see what's going on. So in Mexico, well, I'll start actually in South America. So how did we get our borders breached? Because all of South America and Latin America and Mexico made agreements with our own government to allow illegals to come up through nation after nation after nation and finally cross into America and Mexico. Trump has now put massive amounts of troops on the border, and that's shut down. But all those governments were complicit in bringing that invasion into America. That has to stop, and the drugs have to stop. And what we have a responsibility to do then is to get rid of the cartels and to help every one of those nations have prosperity. So Mexico has the opportunity to get a lot of factories coming into it so that they can be just on the other side of the American border and near shoring. And if they actually produce those products in America or in Mexico, they're part of the Mexican, Canadian, and U.S. Trade alliance, and they're charged no tariffs. So Mexico, if they cooperate with us, is in a great position economically. And we, by the way, need their silver because I believe they're number one or number two in silver production in the entire world. So we looked up, going up to the north again, we looked to Alaska, we looked to Greenland. Those are strategic routes that we need to control, basically sea locks. And then we go down to South America and Latin America, and we've got to control the Panama Canal, so we have a northern and southern route over to Europe, and then we go down to the bottom of South America, and Trump just bailed out Argentina by doing a swap, so we now have a friend down there, and so now we control all of the seaports that are vital to the Western Hemisphere. And then we just basically took over Venezuela, and we're going to expose Trump, made sure that Maduro was taken alive. And this is what I've been waiting for, that I believe triggered the reset, that triggered the transfer of wealth. It was the silver squeeze, yes, but the other part of it was that we have to show, to drain the swamp, that absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, that our elections were stolen. And then we can basically drain the politicians out and the bankers out and the corporate leaders out. I believe in the next quarter, we're going to see massive numbers of politicians that decide to retire, and we're going to see banks that are going to fall. That's going to be because of the silver squeeze and the financial collapse that's going to cause. And we're going to see corporate companies. I mean, if you follow the things that I follow, the retail market is absolutely taking a bloodbath, and the commercial real estate market is going to have the biggest implosion it's ever had, because those people that worked in those high rises and those office buildings are not coming back. They're now going to work out of their homes, and basically those properties are worth 50 cents on the dollar, and they're going to have to refinance at a higher rate, and they're just going to walk away from those leases. It's going to be a bloodbath, but it all has to happen to make the transfer of wealth, to take the money away from the global financial elite, to collapse the banks, to get the politicians out, to get the corrupt corporate leaders out, so that we can have the transfer of wealth that God promises, which is in play right now, and so we can have sovereign governments around the world. So with that, that's kind of a synopsis of the last 6 weeks, and I think more has happened in the last 6 weeks than happened in the last 6 years. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll dig deeper. So this is something that God showed me back in '68 when I had my near-death experience. He told me that this reset can't happen until we have new technology that we don't have. And we'll get into what that is in another later slide. But he also showed me that the kingdoms of man have to fall, and he can make a kingdom fall in a day and rise up another kingdom in a day. So communism is going to fall because it doesn't give people incentive to be innovative, and because it's suppressive. So what are we seeing? We're seeing a communist regime in Venezuela fall. We're seeing a communist regime in Iran fall. And if you follow China, China is probably right on the tip of its own tipping point, where the people have lost confidence in the Chinese government. The Chinese government told them at the Tiananmen Square, if you will agree to live under communism, we'll give you a good standard of living and full employment. they're no longer able to keep that promise. The real estate market has had a catastrophic collapse. Basically, manufacturing is leaving by the droves. There's rampant unemployment. Most of the people who had their money for retirement invested in the real estate market. They've lost it. The middle class has now gone back into poverty. And if that isn't a recipe for an uprising, I don't know what is. So that's communism has to fall, and then capitalism has to fall for a very important reason, because capitalism breeds greed and waste. Basically, the minute that capitalism stops growing, it gets in trouble. It's based on constant growth, constant consumption, and we live on a finite planet. We can't keep squandering God's natural resources. God says the gold and silver is his, the cattle on 1,000 hills are his. Everything. He did not make a world of lack. He made a world of abundance, but he also wants us to be the stewards. And so with that, let's go to the next slide and we'll see what has to happen to usher in this new kingdom under God, where we are the stewards of this planet. We have to have deglobalization and we have to have de-dollarization. Why? Because the nations of the world don't want to be controlled by China with global trade, and they don't want to be controlled by the United States with the dollar. Every nation needs to be sovereign, needs to be able to run its own country, and we all need to learn that we are our brother's keepers. We need to come out of this and understand that every nation in the world has to cooperate in order to heal Mother Nature and to heal this world and to end these wars. So let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to show you what my vision is of what America and the world looks like after this financial reset is done. So the technology that we have to have this reset happen for the world is the quantum financial system. XRP is the rails to transfer money from nation to nation and fractionalize all of God's commodities so that they can be used to buy anything, no matter how small the purchase is. And blockchain to give us open technology, transparent governments, in the ability to steal elections, because everything would be covered right out in the open, and stop the money laundering. And basically all of that gives us honest government. And so here's what happens. This is what God showed me. When the communism falls and capitalism falls, there's a new economic system, and it's tried and true. It's the economic system that America invented following the bankruptcy of America, following the Civil War. It was called the American economic system. And it was a system where we put tariffs, 50% on England. And that forced us to develop the Transcontinental Railroad, the Industrial Revolution, the assembly line, the automobile, the telephone, etc., all of which we shared with the world. And that kind of thing is going to happen again. When Trump came in, the first thing he did in his first term was he got the Chevron decision brought to the Supreme Court, and basically we won. We basically found out that we were going to get access to 5,915 suppressed patents that were supposedly suppressed and kept off the market because they represented a national security threat. No, they didn't, folks. They represented a threat to the money laundering scheme of the global financial elite, and all of that is going to change. We're going to get technologies that will absolutely blow your mind. We are going to get free energy, or virtually free energy, clean, renewable free energy. We're going to expose everything there is to expose about the green movement, and how it is just a trap to drive the entire world into absolute complete bankruptcy. And so here's how the world is going to change. We're going to get out of planned obsolescence and go into products that are designed to last forever, product longevity. We're going to have product reusability and repairability. We're going to have shared resources technology around the world, and we're going to have planetary stewardship, where we come in and we heal this planet that we have so egregiously wounded, and we will clean our lakes, we'll clean our rivers, we'll clean our oceans, we'll repopulate the fish in the oceans, we will green the deserts. I'm going to be doing a whole series of show on all of that. We are appointed to be God's steward. We are to take care of the animals, we are to take care of the planet, and the new economic system that we are going to have is not going to waste the way the old system has had. Why they want to kill us. They've told us before, because they call us useless eaters consuming their natural resources. So before we get off this slide, what's the world going to look like under this new economic system ushered in through the United States of America, the steward that God has chosen? We're not going to have inflation because we have a commodity-backed system and it's hard to manipulate. We're not going to have deflation, not going to have wage suppression, not going to have stock market manipulation. We'll have a whole new kind of stock market. We're going to have an end to boom bust cycles that take your life savings away from you. We're not going to have national and consumer debt. We're not going to have poverty and division, and we're going to get rid of the global conflicts. And so Trump has already ended 8 wars, and he's basically going to see to it that Iran is stabilized, that Venezuela is stabilized, and that Russia finally in the Ukraine war ends, and then everything will be stable, and then we can start the process of rebuilding every government in the world, giving every nation sovereignty, bringing every nation up to a situation where there are not people starving, where there's water, where there's food, where there's all the necessities of life, where we're not trapped to where the things that we need cost so much or are kept in such shortage that we are absolutely slaves. God is going to free us, all of us, every person on this planet, and we're going to come to understand something. We're going to come to understand what is in the Bible. When Christ was asked, Master, what is the greatest verse in the Bible? And he said, to love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. And the second is unto it, to love thy neighbor as thyself. And we're going to learn to understand that if we harm another, we harm ourselves. That's all coming. And we're going to open our eyes. This transition is going to open our eyes to how we have been utterly, completely, and absolutely brainwashed and controlled, and where every aspect of our life has been controlled and manipulated. And it all started with something Kim Clement prophesied. A small stone will bring the systems of man down. That stone is silver. Because of what happened with the COMEX, because of the shortages in the silver market, the banks are going to have to pay out tremendous amounts of money. And I can't tell you when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but basically when the COMEX has to declare force majeure and pay out those contracts, they are going to lose billions and billions and billions of dollars, and banks around the world are going to collapse. So I'm doing this because I want you to understand it all has to happen. It's all planned. It's all engineered. We're all set for what Trump called a major V-shaped collapse and recovery. So just stay there and believe that God has it all orchestrated. He's had it since the foundation of time. We're going to come out of this with such freedom that you can't believe. Now, the impact of the silver squeeze. The banks are going to fail. COMEX is going to the COMEX is going to get exposed, and that's going to bring the banks down. And what's going to happen is we're going to declare. If you could go to the next slide for me, we're going to declare that the Defense Production Act is being implemented, and that means that there are extraordinary measures that are going to be able to be taken to get access to the natural resources that we need to run our industrial base. And it means that basically we're going to do whatever we have to do to get the factories built to produce the products that we need, and we're going to get control of our economic system. And we're going to recognize that silver is crucial, and what that might lead to, which I want to basically point out, is it might lead to implementation of the Production Act in such a way that silver ends up being confiscated. I don't think it will be an outright confiscation, because I think the people would just go zonkers. I think what they'll do is they'll put taxes on it, and they'll put regulations, and we'll basically say at some point in time, well, short time to move out of silver into another investment. But I think that there's going to be a squeeze on silver. So because we need it for industrial purposes, we can't have a technological society if we don't have silver, because there's not really any other mineral out there that has the necessary attributes that silver has. And so we're going to talk about something a little later in this presentation, which is the green scam, which Trump is coming against. And we're going to find out how that's going to have a real major role to play in the next year. So let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to show you a number, $1.3 trillion. That's what they say is likely to be the bill that comes to the bankers as a result of the banking crisis that's been triggered because of the silver shortage. So basically, I think there's going to be bank closures. There's going to be limits on export of silver, because every nation, China just did it. They said they called in all of their reserve silver accounts, got the silver back to China, and they say now we're putting export restrictions. And it looks like we're going to do the same thing. It looks like Saudi Arabia is going to do the same thing. It looks like Mexico is going to do the same thing. So nations are now waking up and saying, we can't run our corporations without silver. So silver is being recognized as an absolutely crucial mineral that is in somewhat of a short supply, and we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. And so basically, we're going to be able to get control of the necessities of life, and we're going to do it by controlling the minerals. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to see just exactly what this silver squeeze is all about. It's basically creating what I call a doom loop. And what's that mean? We're going into a crisis that if we don't take some extraordinary measures, it's going to be bad for the whole world. But here, I want to give you some information. I'm going to read this part of it just verbatim. In 2016, silver production peaked. All right, that means we're not making more, we're not getting it out of the ground, and has declined by 7% since then. And estimates are, listen to this, by 2030, silver supply will meet only 62 to 70% of global demand. What's that mean? It means that that technological revolution that we wanted is going to fall flat if we don't get control of silver supply, and if we don't have the silver we need to basically implement all those technologies that are being released. So that takes us to something that we have to push. We have to push the lie behind the new Green Deal. So the question is, what can we do? Acknowledge the fact that solar, wind, and battery powers and EVs are grossly inefficient and keep us dependent on the grid. And all of those technologies are connected to the grid. You drive an EV car, you have to plug it into the grid. You have solar that comes from a solar field. You've got to transmit it to the home that gets it. And we have a situation where the governments of the world won't let any solar panel be put in if it's more than 30% efficient. And then what happens is when it's transmitted through the wires, it loses 60% of that. So we're about to find out that these green technologies are absolutely driving the world into debt, and they are a trap. They're all connected to the grid. So the lie that says they're going to give us zero carbon emission using that green technology is a lie from the pit of hell. Let's go to the next slide. And we're going to break it down, the truth about the new Green Deal and about the silver crisis. We have to come to recognize that picture up there with the windmills, with the solar panels, with the car, that's all in one way or another connected to the grid. And Trump is standing up and finally going to raise the alarm and say, he says that Trump mocks Green New Deals in Las Vegas. And basically, those people on the Democratic side who've been posturing and saying, we're going to kill the world, we're going to find out that everything they've been doing has been a lie. So here are the issues that we're going to be facing relevant to the new Green Deal. Green energy is costly and inefficient. It consumes massive amounts of silver. Now I want to stop here. And what we're going into is an absolute crisis. If we're going to have that shortage that I told you about a minute ago, which is very catastrophic, it could well be double that because the solar fields are going into massive production and just growing and growing and growing. And Samsung has come out with a new battery that consumes way more silver than was required for the lithium batteries. But we're going to find out in the coming months that we don't need those batteries. We don't need Samsung's batteries. We don't need the lithium batteries. What we need is access to the patents that have been suppressed. And I think the most promising technology is there, and it's real, and it is a magnet. So we need the rare earth, which Trump is seeing to it that it gets, and a magnet lasts 300 years, and it's not connected to the grid, and we can use that for the EV market. If we go full bore into the EV market and the solar panels, those two technologies alone, it is projected will consume all of the silver on Earth. So some things have to be done, and they're going to have to be dramatic. They're going to have to happen. Let's go down to the next slide, and I'll give you some facts right off the bat. This is coming from a documentary, The Lost 100 Years, and it disclosed that in 1921, there was a Nikola Tesla automobile called the Pierce Arrow, and guess what? That automobile ran on free energy from the air. Free energy. And then in 1987, there was a device the size of a pack of cigarettes. It was shelved, of course, but it had the capability of running an electric car with energy from the vacuum. And now we've got what's happening over in Africa with the technology that looks like it's coming out that has that same technology running off the vacuum. So basically what we need to do is going down to the next segment. Dependency on fossil fuels is a lie from the pit of hell. Now we're going to have oil for quite a long time because it takes time to tool up and bring to scale a new technology, especially one that we have to, if we have to offset a technology that is multi-trillion dollars. You can't just flip that switch overnight, but we're going to transition into clean, free energy, and the world is going to change in ways that are not going to be shortages. We're going to have all the energy needed. We're going to regreen the planet. We're going to become the stewards of the world. And the fate of the planet depends on access to free energy and to the people knowing the truth about the suppression of what's been done to us. Let's go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about solar panels. Solar panels have a lot of things in them, not just silver. They're massive consumers of silver. But if you look at that picture down below, they're very susceptible to what? To windstorms, to hailstorms, to hurricanes, to tornadoes, and basically they're going into our landfills at unbelievable rates, meaning they got to replace them and replace them and replace them. But more importantly, it means we're contaminating our environment with all the things that are in it, and we're massively consuming silver that we don't have. So let's go over here. I'm going to read these next things on here. Highly inefficient. Solar panels are not allowed to get on the market if they're above 30% efficiency. That can't be allowed. We have to get out from under the solar panels. And transmission losses, 60% going from that solar panel field to your home. And they're land intensive. All that land that you see in that picture, that could be growing food. That could be a desert that got regreened. There's a lot of better things we could do with that land than that. They're subject to water damage, which I talked about. They could represent an ecological hazard when they're put into landfills, and they're completely unsustainable. Currently, they consume 150 ounces of silver annually, and it's rapidly growing. So basically, between the batteries and between the solar panels, they have the ability to consume all of the world's annual production of silver. We have to find better alternatives, and they're there, and we will get them. Let's go to the next slide, and then we've got another green energy solution that is equally inefficient, and that is wind, and it does the same thing. It kills fish in the ocean and marine life. It kills birds. It takes up acres of land. Even if it's in a desert, we're going to find that we have the technology to regreen those deserts. There's far better uses for the land than setting ugly, obtrusive windmills out there that basically don't work very well. They can only be put in certain locations. They're subject to damage from wind and from elements, and basically they're replacing them all the time. And they kill birds and they kill marine life, and they require large amounts of land, and they are costly to maintain and are prone to damage. And my son lives in Texas, and he found that firsthand, that if you get a winter storm, you're likely to have no energy, and it's likely to be for a long time. So as I say, we're going to transition out of the lies of a new Green Deal agenda, and we're going to get technology that really works. Let's go to the next slide, and this is what we're talking about free, non-polluting energy. It's no myth. We got it. We're going to get it. We're going to scale it, and it's going to change the world. It's going to do what God said. We are going to regreen the earth. We're going to take the deserts of the world, and we're going to make them blossom again. So I'm going to be doing a whole series on all the things that we're going to do for stewardship for this planet to bring it back to what it was. There was a documentary that I watched recently, and what they said was that we have a 10% Earth. Now, what do they mean by that? They said, if you look at the Earth, if you look at the minerals that we have, if you look at the forest, if you look at the marine life, it's about 10% of what it was before we came in and started pillaging the land. We're going to have to restore God's bounty. Let's go on to the next slide. And we're going to break down the enemy's in-game agenda. And I think everybody probably is pretty aware of it. Unless you were absolutely asleep, deaf, and dumb, you realize that the world changed unbelievably when we had COVID, when we were all locked down. And you understand, I hope, that what they wanted to do was control us. And they've told us all along that they want to kill us useless eaters. The Georgia Guidestones set the goal at killing all but 500 million people. The UN set the goal at killing all but 1 billion people. And so we're going to get into a situation where people really truly understand that and believe it, and the truth of that is going to wake us up, and we're going to basically become stewards of the world. We're going to use the resources that God gave us in responsible ways, and the world is going to become a literal Garden of Eden. Let's go on down to the next slide. This one and the next one are absolutely crucial. So I ask you either take notes or take a screenshot. So here's what I want to say. We're up against China and the BRICS nations for basically the monetary system. They want to basically devalue the dollar and get basically more and more people using yuan and other currencies. And that's fine. We don't want to be the sole reserve currency of the world. It needs to be controlled by several nations. But I just want you to know, you do not want to live under communist China, under the CCP. Here's what they have already implemented. If those of you read the Bible, you know what the beast system is. It's a system where man can neither buy nor sell, where all the necessities of life are controlled by the governments. So this is what China has already today implemented, and what you will have ruling your life if America doesn't fulfill its destiny. We have 5G facial recognition throughout every city in China. You can't go any place where they're not tracking you. And you go on the internet and they got bots monitoring everything you say. They're issuing a programmable currency that will be able to determine if you don't spend the money when they want you to spend it, basically it just evaporates, and they can control who can buy and who can sell. And if you get a bad social credit score, they can determine that anybody who has connections with you, their credit score goes down. Your employer's credit score goes down unless they fire you, and they can create a situation where you can't ride a bullet train, you can't go on a plane, you can't leave the country, you can't have a job, you can't have a house. So basically you are just ostracized from all of society, and you literally can't buy and can't sell, and you're done. And that is the system that China is putting into place, has put in place, and wants to inflict upon the rest of the world. And so basically, that is the beast system. It's right there, and it's all driven by central bank digital currencies and by 5G and by technology. But Donald Trump has a different version for the economic system that America wants to give the world. So let's go to the next slide, and this slide is equally important. So what Donald Trump has said, he's put it in legislation. We will not have a central bank digital currency. So now I need to give you some history. So you go back a few years, and China was the leader in mining for Bitcoin, but they kicked it out, and Donald Trump took it. Why? Because Bitcoin is decentralized. They wanted a central bank digital currency so they could control the people and create the beast system. So now Trump has said that we're going to be the crypto capital of the world. And what he's doing is implementing a system that's going to free humanity. It's going to be decentralized financial system running on quantum computing technology with XRP as the rails to basically be able to fractionalize any of God's commodities, transfer from nation to nation in a matter of seconds, and transfer millions or billions or even trillions for virtually nothing. That's the system that God showed me had to happen in 68. I didn't know the details, but he said, when I change the world, when I step in, there will be a new technology that's required in order to run my kingdom economy. And it's here now. And it's basically quantum computing. It's the data banks that we have. It's the AI, it's the XRP, it's all of it. So what happens under that system? We have a decentralized economy that provides privacy. And what I mean by that, you're on a blockchain, you're on a decentralized system. It's going to give us the ability to see that we have fair and honest elections. It's going to be able to track the banks and the corporations and capture anybody who basically is committing money laundering. It prevents election tampering, prevents money laundering. Transactions are digitized, fractionalized, and settled in 3 to 6 seconds for a fraction of a cent. That is God's kingdom right there. So the kingdoms of man, capitalism falls, communism falls, and stewardship is birthed under America, and America will raise up financially, and we will help the rest of the world raise up, and we'll bring, as Donald Trump has said, every nation in the world has to operate at relative economic parity for there to be peace on the world. And he wasn't the only one who said it. Way back when, and Eisenhower said it, is there any man, is there any woman, is there any child that doesn't understand that lack of economic parity between nations is a central cause of war? So there's your new economic system from God. There is the fall of nations and the rise of nations and the removal of control mechanisms and the issuance of freedom to mankind. This is the last slide before we go to the announcements of my book. And basically, this is why God chose America. We are not going to inflict the world with a beast system that's going to basically enslave the world. We're going to give them a free, open system with access to everything, and only America meets every one of the things that are checkmarked on here. And here they are, a free society that nations can trust. Once we get out from under the beast system, the world is going to clearly recognize they don't want to be under communism, they don't want to be under China, they don't want to be under Russia, they don't want to be under Iran. Basically, we're the only option. We're the nation that the people will come to trust. And then diverse and abundant natural resources. America is a cornucopia of resources, diverse and innovative economy. We have all kinds of technology, which means we can be leaders in a lot of different fields, leadership in manufacturing and trade. So with what Trump did, we're going to have 5,915 patents that we can assess and bring to market, those that make sense, that those that are going to solve real world problems. And demographics as it relates to GDP. What does that mean? It means if you're Japan or if you're China and you have a very, very old population, it means that harms your GDP because those people have gone from productivity to basically being recipients. And so we have a relatively young a labor force by comparison. Plus, we have all the technology we need to basically manufacture anything through automation if we need to. And then this next one is very important. If you're going to be the global superpower of the world, or one of them, you need to have a global language. And the UN years ago said that the United States of America was the global language. You can't be an international, ship captain or a jet airplane pilot unless you speak English. And right in the Bible. In the Bible, if you go to the Bible, the book of Revelations, you go in there and it says basically that England will be the mouthpiece of the world. And that's England. Now, we've separated from England. So if you look at the descriptions in the book of Revelation, originally the lion had wings. But when we fought the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, we broke away, but we kept that language. And so we are the language of the world, of the free world, of the entire world. And the American economic system is what we use to become the wealthiest nation in the world following the Civil War, when we did just exactly what Trump is doing. We imposed 50% tariffs on England. And that made us innovate the Industrial Revolution. We've developed the railroad, transcontinental railroad lines, the Industrial Revolution, the assembly line, the automobile, the telephone, et cetera, and shared all of that with the world. And that's what's coming. Now, I see that we brought up my next slide, which is the introduction of my new book. It's coming soon. I'm going to be talking to the publisher this week, but tentatively, I'm thinking that we're probably going to release it for pre-sale probably the first week in February, and release it for open market probably on the 16th of February. So this book is coming soon. And let me tell you what basically God shared with me. He always has me do things a year or two in advance. So my first book, Liberty Crusade, The Fight to Save the Free World, was written in advance. And then when I put it out, I had to rewrite it to make it current. That book's out. It's your primer. And this is kind of like the middle school book. It's written for kids in sixth grade level. But God gave me the name 3 years ago, Restoring the Republic. And that's where we're at. We're restoring the republic within the United States of America, and we're sharing those guiding principles with the rest of the world. We're not a communist nation. We're not a democracy. Democracy, according to our founders, was called mobocracy, because the very second that the population understood they could get money from the treasury, it was just a matter of time until people were casting their votes for whoever would give them the most handouts. And then next thing you know, we're in debt and we collapse. So that's not going to happen. So ask you guys a question. Do you think, how much control do you think you have over your children and what they think? I'm going to tell you that, in my opinion, you have very little control, because the schools get them when they brainwash them. The media gets them when they brainwash them. The games that they play brainwash them. Their friends brainwash them. They're brainwashed every single solitary day. And so why do we think we see all these kids coming out of college that are communists, that are liberals, that are socialists? Because they've been brainwashed. But in these two books is the history of the United States, the history of the world, the history of Christianity, the history of everything you need to know to be immune to those lies. So you can get this book and read it for yourself because you need it, but then you can sit down and share it with your children, and you can make them immune to the lies of the enemy. And we can bring up a whole world of people who now serve God, who now are willing to be stewards, who are now willing to green this planet and share everything, all the resources with all of humanity, and be the stewards that God always intended us to be. So stay tuned. We will be releasing this book for free sale in just a few weeks. May God bless you all, and we'll see you again tomorrow with the conclusion to this story.